Used to the routine, Joe grabs a banana nut muffin, a blueberry muffin, a large cup of coffee, which he mixes a package of hot chocolate into, partially for the rush from the sugar, partially to dampen the taste of the coffee. He adds 2 packages of half and half to dampen the tummy-troubling effect of his gas station pain pills and the B vitamins which keep him going. Gleefully, Joe packs his cab with personal belongings he travels with and keeps in his hotel during the week. Basically, it's just a laptop and some normal clothes. Now in full motion, he sets off for his first stop before the sun has time to rise again. A little east of Independence, Highway 160 travels south along 169 a ways before heading back east, where, just up the road, Joe runs into Altamont. After a stop there, he has another a little further down the road in Oswego, then 2 road starts near Columbus, along with a commercial stop he's been told has become a real pain in the ass. After that, he's to hit a few easy commercials, chains, on his way back to Coffeyville, before finally ending up in T-Row. The stop in Altamont was no big whoop. Joe had the time on his scanner rolling as he rolled up. He was at the front door before the engine of his truck stopped running to find no one home. He sprayed the foundation. No trouble with fences, dogs, or riffraff. No surprises. No obstacles. Knocked down the webs, laid down some dust, threw his stuff back into his topper, and did the tedious dance to strap it back down. Filled out the ticket, popped it in the screen door, and processed the stop in his scanner as he headed on to the next one. It was easy, and he hoped it was a good omen. The early morning was cooler than it had been. It wasn't windy at all, and he was already ahead of schedule. A roaring brush fire in the middle of the street greets Joe as he nears the address in Oswego. Being stranded with a burning truck in a place the sort of remote Oswego is would cost Joe at least a day fending for himself on foot. Actually, it would be more like 2 or 3, since today is Saturday, and he certainly can't afford that. So he parks far down the street and hoofs it roughly a half a block to and from his truck, not too worried anyone will mess with it. Just before he hits the brakes, he starts the timer in the scanner. Then he kills the ignition and pops open the door to break the circuit and have the GPS log him as out of the truck. He scrambles to scratch out some formalities on the paper ticket, then hops out of his truck and pops off the strap used to keep his poorly engineered and always broken topper shut while driving and open while working, so he can grab a spray tank. It's just a regular service, but Joe hadn't made a stop there yet. The name on the ticket is a woman's name, which is often bad news. But Joe hopes she's there and, at least, fun to look at. Joe hustles down the street and leaps the stairs to find an open front door, which he walks through to discover that she is, indeed, fun to look at. Not just her, but also her sister, who's with her. They're both in their 20s, wearing boxer shorts and t-shirts, common lingerie for the lovely ladies of Kansas. The fabric is pretty thin, almost see-through, sparing Joe's imagination the need to work too hard at this early hour as he slyly ogles them. The ladies are an odd mix of dyed and dyed-out blonde, brunette, and redhead. 2 fair-skinned Neapolitan scoops of sex. It would make sense that those are the only clean clothes that they have left, as Joe finds them in teamwork against an ominous pile of laundry. Bending and stretching, reaching, heating up from their work enough to feel the need to flap their shirts for the breeze. The bumps in their shorts and in their shirts jiggle in the most delightful way. They're not heavenly creatures delivered from some fantasy world, but today, for Joe Maximo, they'll do. Smiles stretch across both their faces as they spot Joe in the doorway. And one says,
"Looky there! Woohoo! We're happy to see you!"
The Okie twang informs Joe that they're not marriageable, but he wasn't looking to settle down anyway.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
The oldest says,
"We're just cleaning up in here. Sorry we haven't had much time to get things all together."
Well, that's all right. I'll just go ahead and get started outside if you don't mind.
They pop turns like practicing ballerinas while alternating smiling okays.
Have you been having any problems with anything?
In unison, they both shout to heaven above,
"Spiders!"
Remembering his tank hasn't been filled in a while, Joe asks,
Do you have any water outside?
They immediately look confused by his question, so he elaborates.
Like any outside faucets?
The older one asks, deviously,
"Oh yeah? You looking for something wet?"
prompting the younger one to smack her on the shoulder, while the older one feigns ignorance. Joe giggles and nods a yes, but says,
No. I just need some water for the mix.
"We got water in here if you want water, hun. I'll get you some if you want some."
No, it's not for me. I need it for the tank.
"Yeah, there should be something out there. I don't rightly know where, though. We do have some water in here, though, and I'll get you some. Do you want some coffee? I'll get you anything you want."
Trust me, anything I'd want in here would be way too time-consuming. Thank you, I'll just get started.
After a three-way sexy smirk exchange, Joe pops back outside, where he is promptly met by a little boy, who asks,
"What you doing?"
I'm here to spray for bugs.
Just then, Joe notices a pudgy little girl and another little boy on the porch. He asks them.
Do y'all live here?
They all join in a cacophony of nods, and the little boy asks,
"Why do you spray them?"
To keep them away. Hey, little man, do you know where a faucet is?
The little boy lights up and says,
Yeah? Yeah, can I help you?
Yeah, you just gotta stay back a little bit.
as if led by a supernatural presence,
This way.
seeing things only he can see. The little boy marches to the edge of the house to point at the faucet, which is, of course, directly behind an unkempt rose bush. Joe had already tossed 1.5 ounces of concentrated psychic in his 2-gallon tank. He measured it out in its proprietary bottle and tossed it in so automatic that he himself didn't even notice that he did it. And he had to eyeball the sludge in the transparent plastic tank to be sure. Psychic is a general-use pesticide that works well enough keeping anything and everything away that isn't furry, or an ant, or a roach. It doesn't work well on spiders directly, but it does work well on a lot of their food and often serves to knock their numbers down fast. It's very commonly used and has a residual presence in and around most homes and businesses. Joe proceeds to dig through the thorns to the faucet. He takes a few scrapes, but he gets what he needs. He has to be creative with how he props up his tank, which is taller than the height of the hoseless faucet is off the ground. But he manages to get the water in there.
What are you doing that for?
I already have the stuff I need in there. I just have to mix it with water so it'll break up and carry it to where I shoot it.
Joe puts the lid loosely back on the tank so he can stir it with the pump, which is connected to the lid, where it protrudes inside the tank. Then he tightens it enough so it won't leak while he shakes it to mix it. Then he pumps the hand pump 50 or so times to pressurize the tank. His focus has been on the tank, but now he's ready to start. And when he turns to the little boy to remind him to stay back, he notices a dozen more kids have joined him. This new group is led by a very pretty 12 or so year old girl. She asks Joe,
Just what on God's green earth do you think you're doing?
Spraying for spiders. If you want to watch, you have to stay back. And don't touch anything that's wet.
With that, This regular quarterly service turns into an intergenerational, educational, walking tour of death. Joe drenches any foundation he can see and slyly hits a few right angles up high on his way around the house. He knocks down a few small spider webs and a defunct wasp nest with the wand of his sprayer. The grass in the yard is all dead from the incessant pummeling of the foot traffic from the herd of small children. The dirt is barren and thin, but the scene isn't too bad overall. The kids follow Joe and murmur amongst themselves about him and his activities, curious about what exactly is going on, what exactly good this will do, because they don't see any bugs. One of them yells, worried, Joe doesn't tell them they're all too big for what he's spraying to kill them and fear that they'd get too brave and make themselves sick, but explains
When the spray doesn't kill the bugs directly, it sits around and waits for them. And if it doesn't kill them when they show up, it'll at least make a boundary they do not cross.
Just then, a beetle is flushed out, causing an uproar among the kids, hooting and hollering and pointing at it. Joe steps on it and brags,
You see, kids, I got one.
The beautiful 12-year-old girl asks the little boy about Joe.
Has he met Mr. Giggles?
This question catches Joe's attention real quick. He asks the little girl,
Is there a dog here?
No, Mr. Giggles ain't no dog. Come with me, you can meet him.
Joe,
This way.
amongst the herd, follows the little boy around the house to a little wire cage which is not even 3 feet from the back door. Inside of it is a black lump, so black that it seems to disturb all visible light around it, which flutters as it struggles past. It was as real to Joe as any black hole. The form was amorphous, and parts of it had oozed enough to spread into the gaps, swallowing the wires it had touched. The little boy explains.
He's our friend, but we forgot to feed him.
Joe, amazed that he could not identify it, asks,
What is it?
He's a bunny, silly.
Just then, the older one, the lady of the house, opens the sliding glass back door near the cage to scold the kids.
Don't y'all be bothering him. He's busy.
They're no trouble. They're pretty good kids. I told them to stay back, and they're staying back.
She smiles about her well-behaved kids and points at the little girl and says,
That one's mine.
So charming, Joe says, smiling.
I can tell.
She goes back inside the house, and Joe asks the little boy,
Well, you think it's about time we send him on his way? The flies are eating him. I know I wouldn't like that if I were him.
The little boy nods, processing the event. Joe could tell that the situation troubled him. He sensed that the little boy wanted to be a man about it, but just didn't know how. Joe asks him.
You know where a shovel is?
The little boy answers
Yeah, I'll get the shovel. I'll be right back.
and skips off to fetch it. Joe tells the kids to stay put while he hustles to his truck to receive his last in a box of rubber gloves and his handy screwdriver. He returns to find the little boy waiting with the shovel, which Joe takes and says,
Thanks, buddy.
Joe ventures deeper into the backyard. He moves a couple of bikes, and kicks a couple of toys, balls, and filthy squeeze toys out of the way. Then he digs a shallow grave, finding the soil to be friendlier than he figured it would be. Once the hole is dug, he takes the cage over to it. Joe opens the gate and points it over the hole, causing a hefty chunk of Mr. Giggles, the departed bunny, to flop into his final destination. Residues and chunks still remain glued to the cage. Joe spends more time using his screwdriver to scrape off the bunny bits than he did digging the hole. And at the end of it, he certainly couldn't claim that 100% definitely got in there. But when what's done is done, he immediately returns the dirt to the hole. And, surrounded by the kids, bows his head while perched behind the shovel and says,
Here's where Mr. Giggles lies. To the worms, not to the flies.
Joe looks over the somber herd. The onlookers, looking at the whole, thinking their own thoughts. Growing up rapidly, he says to them,
Well, I better get back to work.
After a moment, the kids scatter, and Joe continues spraying the foundation the rest of the way, and then goes into the house strategically, stretching the close-to-cash tank enough to hit every room. Nothing too exciting happens, except for a few devious looks. When the job is done, the older one signs the service ticket, which Joe had automatically rolled up and put in his pocket when he first got there, along with the pen he uses to scratch out an estimation of products used, services rendered, and time spent, with no mention at all with the business about Mr. Giggles, before he hands it to her. She says,
You know what? You're not our usual guy.
Joe says, matter-of-factly,
As a matter of fact, I'm hardly usual. But the guy you used to have killed over and died.
Both ladies gasp, and the older one exclaims,
Oh my goodness. Why?
I don't know. I didn't know him.
but actually, Joe figured he did know what killed the man. Exhaustion. Joe spies in the corner of his eye the fly of her boxers spring open when she leans forward to hand him back the ticket. This little bit of espionage tells him that the older one is truly a brunette. With this new knowledge, Joe moseys on down the road, figuring the younger one was hiding the same thing.